Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where we're going to be firing up the rotisserie and having a look at the continued right-wing lurch of the Young Turks, and particularly that of Anna-Transphobian. I would just like to note, I've never given a fuck about the Young Turks. I'm actually kind of surprised when, like, some of these, like, leftist creators are, like, bending over backwards to be kind to the... It's like, you realize they're just Democrats. That's literally all they are. That's all they've ever been. It's just, like, the sort of hip, almost, online version of fucking MSDNC, Hola Phoenix. I have to say, the one good thing that's come out of all the Anna-Transphobian bullshit is that it's the only reason I'd ever heard of Olayemi, who, I have to say, I mean, has had the absolute best take on this whole thing from the start, and it's just great to watch. It's just been very nice seeing her also not just call out the fucking Young Turks, which, I mean, they named it after a fucking group of genocidal reactionaries, which isn't very nice. But also calling out all these, like, leftist creators who've been sort of bending over backwards to pretend that Anna Kasparian doesn't know what the hell she's doing, when very clearly she knows exactly what she's doing. Let me just adjust this light settings. Second. Okay, that's a bit overexposed. So you can actually see that it's hair, like where my hair ends and my shirt begins. Okay, so now just to make it very clear that this is a very deliberate overture to the far right that Anna-Transphobian is making, she decided to go on Destiny. I mean, that's pretty mask off at this point. So we're going to look at that for a little bit.
We started talking a little bit before the show.
Oh, wait, does it help?
Hang on. No, this is the wrong thing. Oh, okay. Anna Kasparian Sich. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong thing. She didn't go on Destiny. Destiny decided to talk about this shit later. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
This is what I was going for. I have not heard a whole lot about that shooting. What the hell, I mean... Yeah, I mean, that's right near you. What was the deal there? Also, speaking of things I'm not familiar with, I've never heard of Sitch and Adam. I'm not sure what their deal is either. Although, I'm guessing since she's decided to go here after deliberately setting up a situation where she is going to get dragged for being transphobic and racist, and singling out Olayemi. Out of all the people who were dragging her for the transphobic shit, she singles out the one black woman in the entire leftist mafia to attack, which was kinda mask off as well, and fits in with the kind of bullshit that she and Jenk were selling on the subject of bail reform as well. But okay, let's see what...
Hey now, it's your boy PSA Sitch here with another Sunday show with everyone's favorite Supreme Court enthusiast, Adam Frended.
Oh, yeah. I've been reading up on the Supreme Court, Sitch. I'm learning so much about how our country functions.
Okay, I already am, like...
It's amazing. And we have, look, a special guest with us here today.
Yeah, a very special guest.
Anna Kasparian, co-host of The Young Turks. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Are these just the people you go on when you've decided to just do a transphobia? I mean, one of the things that gets me about all this is that nobody is stating what seems to me to be fairly obvious. which is the Young Turks are very much tied in with the Democrats. That is a big part of why they have their platform, because they are liberals who are really sort of connected to the Democratic Party. They do not really rock the boat in that regard. And they very clearly try to orient their messaging around what the Democrats have decided, and particularly the people in the party who matter, which you could fit them in a passenger lift and not even worry about triggering the weight limit. And what they have to say about things. So, of course, they came up with a bunch of just absolute bullshit about bail reform, because the Democrats, particularly around the people around like Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, have decided that being racist about bail reform is a good move. Because the idea, they decided it kind of worked that they out-racisted Trump during the 2020 election, even though Trump was putting on a pretty good show there. It was a tough competition to see who was going to have the most racist campaign. Particularly in that bit where they decided to see who could slag off Chinese people the most. That was a special moment in history to be witnessing. But then this whole thing where they basically decided, in a moment when trans people are under massive attack and the Democrats are doing nothing about it, to throw trans people under the bus, that is kind of a telling thing. Because the thing is that Hillary Clinton, a few months back, it might have been a year now, I don't remember exactly, said that the Democrats can't afford to be dealing with niche issues. By which she meant, things like trans rights, LGBT rights, civil rights, abortion rights, and basically the things that the people who vote for them, the people whose votes they absolutely need, and also irrelevantly the majority of the population give a shit about, at least want to feel like they're supporting, even if they don't necessarily do much of anything about it. And she said, they can't afford to be focusing on all this shit. And Joe Biden has made a point of not doing a damn thing about abortion rights, not doing a damn thing about trans rights, except to very subtly attack, make a low-key attack on trans rights with that new Title IX guidance that he proposed, which is disastrous. And we're running into an election year. So the Young Turks, as people whose loyalty very much is on the side of the Democrats, can either do one of two things, really. Either they can be on the right side of history, which means really seriously dragging the Democrats for this bullshit in the run-up to an election year, or they can come up with some sort of provide propaganda cover by not being critical of this. And you can't just not say anything, though, as Olayemi pointed out. Shutting the fuck up would have been entirely preferable, entirely less harmful, just not talking about the issue than what they did do. But, yeah, so, they try to provide some sort of justification for not giving a shit about this, and the Democrats not giving a shit about this, in the form of pretending to get mad about birthing people. Jesus, that's horrible, Phoenix.
I feel like everyone, our audience definitely knows who you are, but you're probably doing other things as well.
At the moment, I'm not. I'm mostly focusing on TYT, but yeah, I'm the executive producer.
I just noticed that when you use the abbreviation rather than saying the Young Turks, you get T Whitey.
And co-host of the Young Turks, and have been since 2007. And, I've done other things on the side at various points of my career, but for now, that's the main focus.
Just can't help noticing.
Okay, so we're very excited to have this conversation. We started talking a little bit before the show, and you seem open to talking about a lot of things. You seem to be going through kind of a political transformation, evolution. I don't really know.
That's an interesting way of putting it. And we're going to see a lot of, I'm pretty sure we're going to see all the the Dave Rubin bullshit, the Tim Pool bullshit, and we're going to see it all in fast forward, because she's decided to cross this particular Rubicon as quickly as possible.
right word to call it, but I'll let you talk about that. But first of all, people want to know, because you did mention in our little chat in DMs that I was wrong about the Daily Wire thing. Now, I make predictions
Daily
on
Wire?
the show all the time, and I have never
Right.
been wrong before. So people, I've been making jokes about you might end up at the Daily Wire. That's not true?
No.
Well, I mean, it seems entirely plausible. I could totally see her in it. In fact, I mean, the moment that if this weren't a calculated move on her part, she should have known that she fucked up. If indeed she had fucked up, which very clearly she did not. This was very clearly deliberate. Was when fucking, Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin and all the fucking far-right assholes in the whole far-right bullshitosphere came and praised her and said, look, she's got a good take and the leftists are canceling her for it. And the minute, any decent person has, any decent person has that experience. They say something, and, like, the people who supposedly are their political allies say, holy shit, what did you just say? That's horrible. And horrible people say, wow, yeah, and applaud. That's when you know you fucked up, if indeed you fucked up. But clearly she did not fuck up, because at this point she's like octupled down on this. This was very much a calculated move. And Cenk Pezevenk has fucking made that even better by a trans woman who worked for them left and made a public statement about how it's a hostile environment for trans people, which is not surprising considering they got two big transphobes running the thing. That's not surprising. And so he decided the best thing to do was to drag her on Twitter and cast aspersions on her mental health. Because that move worked so well for Elon Musk like a month or two ago when he did the exact same thing. Until a bunch of people pointed out that actually this was gifting the former employee of Elon Musk a verdict in a discrimination case, which is exactly what Cenk Uygur did. So yeah, good move there, Cenk. Just beautifully done. You've anyone who is making trying to make a case for a hostile work environment on the grounds of transphobia, all they have to do is point at that fucking tweet. So, yeah.
No, it's funny because, I'm going through something very real and very sincere.
There's absolutely nothing real or sincere about this. Because 11 months ago, she pointed out what bullshit all of this birthing people crap is. All this stuff about where the right-wingers pretend to be outraged about it as if it's an actual thing that's happening, as opposed to some bullshit that mostly they've just made up. There's nothing sincere about this. This is a move. This is a play. And every single bit of this is calculated, including the fact that she's going on here.
And it's uncomfortable, and it has not been an enjoyable process for me. It's been difficult. And so
it hasn't seemed difficult. It seemed like, she's going through the steps. And as Olaimi pointed out, she actually had to keep on doubling down, specifically because what she needed for that Dave Rubin energy was she needed leftists to get pissed off at her. And when she first did this, just about all the big names, like leftist online, content creators and people were all trying to explain it to you. Maybe you don't understand. This is a right-wing talking point that you're just echoing here, and maybe let's just break this down for you. Absolutely trying to find the most utterly charitable interpretation imaginable. And so that didn't work, so she had to keep on going at it until people really got pissed off, so she could then say, see, look, the left, they just want to cancel you for the slightest transgression.
The internet being what it is, all sorts of people from all sorts of political ideologies have theories on what's actually happening with me, right? And the main
well, you've heard mine,
both from the left and the right, is that I'm grifting.
Well, yes, you definitely are grifting. You are trying to make money off of this. That is the whole. That is your game. This is a grift. This is a fucking calculated move. You know perfectly well that what you're doing is bullshit, and you've decided to say it anyway. Clearly, you have decided that this is a good economic career move for
Which
you.
is hilarious because literally nothing has changed about my work life. I'm in the same place. I have the same audience. The audience.
Except that I don't think she's going to have the same audience for long, because a whole lot of people who watch, TYT, would tend to think of themselves as not liking transphobia, and if they decide to just become an openly transphobic broadcast, stream, whatever, a YouTube channel, then they are going to lose some people and they're going to gain other people, and very clearly this is part of cultivating that.
Audience doesn't like some of what I have to say or some of the new conclusions I've come to.
Yeah, new conclusions, because she pointed out this was all bullshit 11 months ago.
And so I wanted to kind of set the record straight about what I have personally experienced. I don't know what my political labels are at this point.
Okay, see, here we go. Here's the Tim Pool line.
Right, because I feel like I don't really fit anywhere. And it's...
Well, no, you fit in with the right wing. In fact, I mean, they've been applauding you. Clearly, you fit in there. Clearly, you fit in with Pezevenk, because you're still over there at TYT. They haven't fired you. It's the trans people who are leaving because of a hostile work environment. You get to stay on, and fucking Uyghur is defending you. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're doing pretty well, actually.
That's just full honesty. It's, again, very uncomfortable for me. And I want to say that out of any point in my adult life, this is probably the point where...
She's the victim, y'all. She's the victim. That's what you gotta understand. It might be uncomfortable as a trans person whose income depends on these people, who's employed by these people, hearing them decide to put their money to invest in transphobia. That might feel uncomfortable. As a trans person in the US in general, it might feel uncomfortable to see another voice with a platform being added to the drumbeat of propaganda that is being used to justify murderous laws in states accounting for nearly 70% of the surface area of the country. But you don't know discomfort. Only an transphobian knows what uncomfortable really feels like. Let's hear it.
Where I'm the most malleable and open to new information because of what I've experienced over the last few years. And I can get into details.
What have you
about that.
experienced? Like, give us an example, because everybody's just been utterly, bending over backward, except for Olayemi, which I love to see, because I don't understand this affection for TYT. I've never understood it. I've never given a shit about them. And the only reason I'm doing this now is because it's an interesting case study. And also, I just feel like yelling at Anna Kasparian because she sucks. I feel like there's a teachable moment here, the way the TYT has just sort of moved way to the right, apropos of nothing, at a time when it is opportune for the Democratic Party to promote transphobia rather than to be opposing it, and thus making it even more visible that the Democrat leadership in Washington are doing nothing to oppose it at a time when that would be a historic necessity.
In just a moment. But that was the reason why I told Adam that no, this isn't like a Daily Wire thing. I have no interest in working at the Daily Wire. I have no interest in leaving.
She doesn't need to. I mean, it's not she's not the one losing her job. It's the fucking trans people losing their jobs over at TYT.
TYT. If anything, I just feel a responsibility to kind of correct what I got wrong in the past to the best of my ability.
So what we're seeing is she's going to a full-scale right-winging, essentially. she's decided she clearly got it wrong when she pointed out that this was a right-wing talking point, the whole birthing people thing 11 months ago. And so now she's asking, what else has she got wrong?
And just do better moving forward. And the reason why I've been at TYT as long as I have is, despite what any of you might think about Cenk, he...
Hang on just a second. There we go. That's better.
He has never once tried to censor me or tell me what I can and can't say. That's the reason why, you know, we get into these fiery debates and there's never any, like...
Yeah, which is, again, I mean, this just reminds me every time somebody says some shit like this. When Chomsky was on the BBC, and his interview was like, yeah, I don't self-censor, nobody tells me what I can and can't say. And and Chomsky just says, yeah, but if you didn't believe the things you believe, you would not be sitting in that chair right now. And that's the answer here. The reason that she's never had a need, apparently, to self-censor at TYD is precisely that she's fucking... she is ideologically of a piece with the editorial line. And she's clearly, when she decided to do this transphobic shit, I mean, it would have been entirely reasonable for Cenk Uygur to say, look, either you apologize for that bullshit or you need to seek other employment. That would have been the appropriate thing to do, because she broke a major taboo, like, in sort of liberally spaces of just being outright transphobic. Like, you're supposed to be politely transphobic if you're going to be transphobic, and at the very least pretend to care about trans rights. And she just outright says, yeah, she just says, fuck up. Clearly, I mean, and he did not do, there was not even slightly, there's no sign of discomfort. He just immediately joined in the transphobia with her. So obviously, this is a move that they are making together.
Retaliation for it.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I'm free to speak my mind and genuinely speak my mind the way I have been, I plan on staying there, and there's absolutely no monetary or financial incentive for me to do anything I'm doing right now.
Well, we sit you on box a lot on...
Yeah, except that's sort of disingenuous, because clearly there is a monetary or financial incentive for TYT to appeal to the far right. Because those media outlets do some serious numbers. I mean, people talk about... Yeah, I mean, somebody on Chad like 2 weeks ago or so was saying that Tim Pool was some right-wing podcaster nobody cares about. It's like, if you look at the numbers he had in chat during any given stream, and compare that to the number of people that, like, all the big names in leftist content creation get. I mean, if you combined all of their chat numbers for a whole week, they still would not manage one hour segment of Tim Pool, because they're not getting anywhere near the kind of promotion these right-wing outlets do. There's all sorts of fucking money. I mean, Steven Crowder turned down 57 mil. And he's the entertainment. He's not the guy they turn to for what passes for analysis in those spaces. He's like, he claims to be a comedian who doesn't have jokes. He doesn't know any jokes. He's a no-joke comedian, and they were offering him 57 mil. There is a clear financial incentive for something of a household name like the Young Turks to make this sort of a move and try to appeal to the right, because there is money in that. Adria asks a question that I've been very curious about, because, I mean, as Olaimi points out, like, when people in the context of, like, calling Anna Transphobian out for being racist, which she does fairly regularly, she'll be like, I'm not white, I'm Armenian. At the same time as she dyes her hair like perfectly blonde, like not a single brown root showing anywhere. And yeah, so like she's Armenian when it is handy, not when she could somehow try to use that to get out of an accusation of racism. I don't really think that works. But the thing is, it doesn't work. I mean, it does raise up the conflict of like being. Yeah, I mean, if she's like serious, if she is like saying that she really cares about her background and all that, her Armenian background, you do have to wonder. She's honest. I mean, that's like me going on a fucking co-hosting a podcast called Einsatzgruppen. Like, and no, I wouldn't fucking do that
on this show. And I think people, I think they like that. I think they admire that we are able to fight with one another over a policy position and still walk away friends. So I spent the last week, I was watching a bunch of your most recent videos. And I mean, you're snapping back at Jank quite often. I mean, it's actually quite
over things
refreshing.
that don't matter.
There's a couple things, and we have questions on these, but I'll let Sitch. I don't know. Do you have anything that you want to ask before we get started?
Yeah, look at this. If you look at this chat, some mad rhetoric, whoever the hell that is, one of the Sitch and Adam chatters goes, if TYT gives her the option to be as open as she has been, we misjudge the network. Meaning, I would assume that right-wingers really ought to give them a chance, which is the whole point. Like she's saying, our audience hasn't changed, there's no financial incentive or anything like that. It's like, if they start pulling right-wing audiences and getting some of that right-wing sponsorship money, yeah, there's a big fucking incentive there.
So, yeah, it turns out that Anna is a massive fan of our program. She's seen every episode, just huge fan, right?
Well, okay, so I happened to come across a video you guys did about me. It was the stream on, I hate to name names, but you guys were covering the leftist mafia and their insane gaslighting video about me.
Their gaslighting video. If you watch that video, they were, with the exception of Olayemi, bending over backwards to try to find some way to say that she wasn't, like, that this was not something fundamentally wrong with her position, that this was just a bad take or something like that, and that she wasn't transphobic and stuff. Everybody was fucking bending over backwards to find some excuse for her, except for Olayemi. Gaslighting. Fuck right off.
And you guys were the only ones, as far as I could see, that actually did a good job in highlighting how badly they were gaslighting me.
Right.
And so
they weren't gaslighting you, though. Gaslighting, gaslighting is when you try to cause somebody to doubt their entirely valid perceptions and make themselves think that they are, like, going out of their minds. That is what gaslighting is. Literally, not even viewed as uncharitably as she clearly wants to do it. There's nothing gaslighting about what fucking the leftist mafia did. I mean, if anything, it was gaslighting the audience, who, at least some of whom must realize that, yeah, she's transphobic, yeah, this was deliberate, yeah, everything about this was totally calculated, and she knew exactly what she was doing.
So I thank you for doing that, because, when everyone around you, everyone who alleges to be your friends, tells you something isn't true, but they keep repeating it to you.
What's the thing isn't true?
Over and over again. You start asking yourself, like, am I the crazy one? So
what's the thing? Are you gonna give any fucking examples in this? With this wonderfully pliant audience that you've got here? Gonna give any examples?
That I really appreciated that, but you guys have put out a ton of videos about me that have not been friendly or nice, and it's okay. I mean, I can be a good sport about it, and I do think that you guys raised a few valid points, and I just need to be willing to accept where I was wrong and where
Yeah, I mean, she's really avoiding anything concrete
people
here.
are critiquing from good faith. Like, you guys have a little bit of an edgy style, so I'll
Yeah, a little bit of an edgy style. I mean, uh, just judging from the chat here, this is clearly a far right space.
acknowledge that. But I have thick skin, so it didn't really bother me that much.
No, I mean that's
I mean, you've got fucking hell. We've got transvestigation in the house in this fucking chat. Alphabet People says notice Anna's Adam's out. It's like you really don't know. You're really not doing yourselves any favors. The fucking I mean the whole transvestigation thing has been the most ridiculous aspect of online transphobia, and there's been a lot of competition for that title. So now they're trying to say she's secretly trans?
commendable. We're on this kind of like internet environment where everyone's very attacky to each other,
Totally.
especially when they're not like engaging with them in person. So
Yeah.
This is so ridiculous considering just how fucking patronizingly friendly everybody who tried to point out why why what she said sucked was.
you have to have kind of a thick skin. And I know, but I mean, you're talking about earlier, and one of the things that we always commended you on was, when you publicly came out and you said that you were wrong about the Rittenhouse video, which
So she's also defending. She's defending white nationalist mass shooter Kyle Rittenhouse. Wonderful person, Jesus. Like, I mean, she really and again, I can't help noticing that this has not led to a change in her employment situation. She's still co-hosting with TYT. So apparently TYT is the sort of place where it's okay to, justify a mass shooter who decides to attack an anti-racist protest. Apparently it's okay to just, that's the sort of environment. So yeah, I mean, there's no way that's not a calculated move too. Because everybody, I mean, she's been around the fucking block. Everybody knows the far right, the fash, love to defend Kyle Rittenhouse. They love that he got off because it means that they have a chance of getting off when they do this shit. And so they're like riding that as hard as they can because they feel like they, this is a beachhead to the mainstream where if a jury managed to see it the Nazi way, then they can maybe get more people to see it that way, and then they can do whatever the hell they want. And anyone who's been paying any attention to politics at all in the past, 3 or 4 years, knows perfectly well that that is a thing, that is a huge taboo to be breaching. To come, and you wouldn't say, and if she's saying that, you wouldn't just say that offhandedly. And there's nothing offhand about any of this. This is all calculated as hell. Because that's a thing where, again, it would be entirely reasonable if your employer is providing sort of liberal or progressive commentary and that's your gig, and you're going to justify a white nationalist mass shooter, then that's the sort of thing that you'd lose your job over. Unless they've decided that that is going to be an acceptable line for them to take, which is pretty fucking mask off, if you ask me.
I mean, most people when they make a mistake, they just try to hide it or they try to shift blame. Jimmy Dore very, famously shifted blame to his producer, and I thought it was really commendable that you came out and you're like, no, I got this wrong, and you were trying to show, not just do this for your sake, but to say listen, audience. You need to understand that this is the story.
Yeah, seriously. So, I mean, she's just fash. And Cenk Uygur has decided that he wants she wants her Ann Coulter ass on there, but trans people can fuck off, basically. That is what TYT is. And anyone who's defending them at this point, defending their current stance, defending this as in any way something that has any business in any kind of left media ecosystem, then, I mean, the best you can say is that they seriously fucked up. Because you don't... I mean, these are extremely calculated overtures to the far right.
And, I don't want you guys to have the wrong information.
Yeah, there was, look, the one, I guess, through line you'll notice in the various things that we're going to talk about
is bigotry and dishonesty.
This conversation is that it just became abundantly clear to me that where I was getting my information, and I'm not just talking about like, independent lefty outlets. I'm talking about...
Because she very clearly does not get her information from there.
Like legacy media outlets, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them, it's not that they report misinformation, it's that they omit details of the story that...
It's worth noting that the mainstream media that she's talking about have been promoting the transphobia that she's on here defending.
Would, maybe the additional details of the story don't change your mind at all, right? But it's not up to them to decide that. Like, we should...
There are literally no details that could possibly change a reasonable person's mind. Like, if he deliberately put himself into a situation where he was going to be threatening a bunch of people, along with other people threatening those protesters. Like, anything that they would have done would be self-defense. Because it's been a number of years now that you can't really have an anti-racist protest, a leftist protest, without a bunch of fucking chuds with AR-15s and fucking snactical vests showing up and threatening to kill you. And often showing up in their fucking F-150s and trying to run you down and shit like that. So yeah, I mean, there's literally no detail unless you were to say that, I mean, he came from an alternate reality and had absolutely no idea what was going on. It was some, literal, just total sci-fi bullshit. There would be absolutely no detail you could give me that would make what he did okay.
Would know every detail. I think the Amy Cooper story is another example. It was fairly recently I came across Camille Foster's very in-depth investigation into that story, and there were so many details of that story.
Who's Amy Cooper? That is not a name that I'm familiar with. Oh, she's talking about the woman who tried to get a black bird watcher swatted because he filmed her torturing her dog, and she threatened to call the cops and claim that he was threatening her, and she didn't realize he filmed the whole thing. So she's decided, I mean, that she's going to pretend that this is okay. She's really going in hard here.
That were intentionally omitted or left out of the legacy media reporting of it. And that...
We had a literal video of the entire incident. You can see her lying to the cops, trying to get this guy shot on film. You can see everything that he said to her. You can see everything she said to him. Like, seriously, this is really remarkably mask off. And and what I just keep coming back to here is she can say this bullshit. It's just racist in two cases, transphobic in another case, pro-fascist in all cases, bullshit, and she gets to keep her job with TYT. That tells you everything you need to know about TYT. Because, I mean, this is Tim Pool grade bullshit. And they're going to keep her on, even as, trans people are leaving because of the hostile environment. That's just... There is really no justification for maintaining any kind of relationship with TYT and claiming to be any kind of a leftist at this point.
Painted a picture in my mind and in the minds of many others that, there's no justification for the way that she was, panicking when she was on the phone with the...
She wasn't panicking. You could actually see her rehearsing it. There was no panic. She rehearsed what she said before she called. The whole thing was deliberate. There was no panic. It was an act.
911 dispatcher, right? But then you get this, then you find out, based on what Camille Foster had found out and reported, was that like she didn't have good cell reception. So the person on the other end of...
She didn't... Who gives a shit? She was still lying. She was still trying to swat the guy. Who gives a shit if her cell reception was no good? This is the justification for, like, telling a lie that she knows is gonna potentially get this guy killed? She had bad cell reception?
That conversation, couldn't hear her. She was panicking because she genuinely thought that she was...
No, she wasn't. Like, I mean, do you realize the video is right there? You can watch the whole thing. There was no panic in anything. Every bit of it was fucking fucking deliberate and calculated.
At risk after, here's another thing that was omitted in a lot of the reports, after she was literally threatened by the bird watcher.
No, she wasn't threatened, though. She was not threatened. It was not omitted. It didn't happen. She lied. I mean, again, this is so completely unforced. There is no reason she has to be doing this. She clearly... this is how you can tell how calculated this is, and how calculated this is as a move to appeal to the far right. Because it's one thing to have a shitty take on trans people. Having a shitty take, saying some transphobic shit and doubling down on that, does not automatically... There is no, like, logical reason that automatically compels you to also become a Kyle Rittenhouse apologist or an Amy Cooper apologist and lie about, and try to defend her lies. Even, I mean, speaking of gaslighting, it's on fucking film. It is on, you can watch the video of it. I mean, this is actual gaslighting. See, there's no reason those things follow from each other. This is something, she went on here specifically for the purpose of doing this. This is very clearly a calculated move, and it is a move that is clearly endorsed by TYT because she's still working for them. And I have not heard anything about how she's not, even after giving this, fucking car crash of an interview that is just one right-wing talking point. I mean, one, not even like mainstream right-wing to a certain extent, just outright fast shit. After another, completely irrelevant to the original thing that she, tried to get herself canceled for. I mean, this every single bit of that, she is not panic, much like Amy Cooper, who she claims is panicking because of bad cell phone reception, because when she was trying to get a birdwatcher swatted. I mean, it's interesting. I can see why she would feel a certain kinship, because here she is making a very calculated rightward lurch. I mean, it isn't even a lurch. It's like a fucking rightward dash, right alongside Veze van Goigur. And acting as if she had no choice. Like she's just having one epiphany after another, and each epiphany is just straight up Nazi shit.
Right? Who said, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, and you're not going to like it. And then he proceeds to try to lure her dog to him. And listen.
Yeah.
Well, lure her dog? You mean the dog she was trying to strangle? The dog she was abusing, and that he filmed the whole thing. She was abusing the dog. She was trying to strangle the fucking dog, and he filmed it because he was raising the issue. He filmed it because he knew that this was a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
You might still feel that her behavior was uncalled for, whatever. That's up to you.
Uncalled for? She tried to get a guy killed after torturing a dog. I mean, she already sucked for torturing the dog, and then she decided to use the fact that cops have a habit. Cops know that they can get away with just, shooting random black guys for no credible pretext, and decided to give some of them an opportunity for a guy who was just looking out for her dog and opposing cruelty to animals.
But you should know all those details. And I will say, from my personal opinion, if I'm alone at a park and some random guy.
Yeah, it's funny. She's talking about omitting details. She's left out why there was any conflict over the dog. And it's not because we don't know. It's on the video. All of this is on the video. The guy knew that he was taking his life in his hands to do this, and that it would be his word against hers, and his word would be worth shit. So he decided, in this racist-ass society, he was going to film it. So we have that. When she's, like, deliberately omitting that.
Tries to lure my dog away from me, I'm gonna freak out. You know, like, I just am. And so...
Okay.
Okay, with the Rittenhouse story, I was gonna cover the trial, and I just needed to go back and just, like, really, really look at all of the details and remember all the details, so when I do the story, I get the facts right. And then as I'm doing that, I come across a New York Times video, and this was a really, really well done video that they posted on YouTube that showed you in slow motion, like, how everything transpired that night.
Mm-hmm.
And once you see it for yourself, it's really, really difficult to argue that in those moments he was not acting in self-defense.
Well, unless you take into account the fact that he deliberately went to a place miles away from where he's from for the purpose of threatening protesters with a gun. That's not self-defense. Anything they were doing is self-defense. Because when somebody is threatening you with a gun, they are threatening you. They are threatening to kill you. And clearly he intended to kill people because he did.
And this is an area where, you know, Jake and I disagree, because, you know, if someone's hitting you over the head with a skateboard, that could kill you, you know? And so...
Well, yes, and if you're fucking pointing a gun at them before they do that... See, the thing about guns is you can kill people with them, too. And people do have a right to get a little bit annoyed with somebody who just shows up and apropos of fuck all decides to point a gun at them.
You know, Jake is he's a strong-minded person, and
he's an asshole, is I think what she's going for.
Not one to back down from a fight. So in his mind, you know, someone confronts you with a skateboard, he doesn't see it as a threat. But
yeah, especially when you've got a fucking gun. And the threat, I mean, the gun is also a threat. I mean, it's like, this is so fucking willful. Like, and this is, you know, there's none of this follows from the original bullshit that she was on. Oh, somebody in their chat is going, ask her if Breonna Taylor was shot in their bed. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, because I bet, I mean, the amount of fash bullshit that is coming out of her mouth right now, I would not be entirely shocked, in fact, if she tried to come up with some bullshit about that, too.
But I do, and Rittenhouse is not a big, burly guy who can, like, defend...
He had a fucking gun. He clearly knew how to use it because he killed people.
...defend himself against someone who's, like, hitting him over the head with a skateboard as he's lying on his back. So once I saw all those details, first of all,
There's aren't... Like, I mean, this is just...
had to convey them to my audience and be honest about what the reality was.
But you're not being honest, because you're just sort of omitting a lot of important details, like the fact that he was threatening people with guns and they've had a right to defend themselves.
The other thing was, you know, there was a lot of misreporting about how Kyle Rittenhouse was in possession of an illegal weapon.
Who gives a... see, I don't give a shit. It was a weapon that could kill people. It looked like a gun, and it was a gun. And he killed people with it.
And that he crossed state lines.
Which he did. He did cross state lines. His fucking mother, his fucking white nationalist ass mother, took him across state lines so he could shoot at protesters.
Oh, no.
Okay?
Yeah.
So...
That wasn't misreporting, which is why she's not even pretending to be correcting anything.
That was a lie.
No, it wasn't, actually. The most you can say is that actually that gun, I mean, was it was not widely reported what sort of gun it was, and it was a complete technicality whether he, as an underage person, could which kind of deadly firearm someone his age could possess under Wisconsin law. That wasn't a lie. I doubt most people actually even noted, because he's underage. You wouldn't necessarily even assume there was anything, and also, who gives a shit? He should not have been there. He should not have brought a gun. He should not have shot those people. But she clearly has decided that it will be good for her career to appeal to the sort of people who want to shoot anti-racist protesters.
And it's not a lie that I just made up in my mind.
Oh, well, I mean, as opposed to the other lies that you've told here?
Right? That was how it was reported initially, which is why I would mention the state lines, but not because, oh, how dare he cross state lines. Anyone...
Well, yeah, except the thing is, again, it does go to the issue of this bullshit claim of self-defense, because he deliberately put himself in a situation where he would be putting people in fear for their lives, and he actually had to cross state lines to do it. It was a considerable amount of driving distance in order to do it. This wasn't some sort of, this wasn't like rioting outside of his home, waking him up in the middle of the night and he doesn't know what's going on. He deliberately went to Kenosha for the specific purpose of pointing guns at anti-racist protesters.
In this country has the right to cross state lines. It was because it was reported that he was in possession of an illegal gun,
Right.
and he traveled across state lines with an illegal gun, which is a serious charge. But it turned out...
Well, no, it wasn't that the gun was illegal. That he, being underage, couldn't legally possess it. And it turned out, on a complete technicality again, that this particular model, in Wisconsin anyway, is okay for him to have. But that still doesn't change any of the rest of it.
That he did not travel across state lines with that
Yeah,
weapon.
he didn't do that. Yeah, the weapon
Right.
was in the area already. Yeah.
So but he still traveled across state lines. So he met up some fucking local chuds, and they gave him a gun. Just this random fucking prick who just comes out of nowhere. Here, have a gun, shoot at these fucking protesters. Yeah, I mean, that sounds legit. I mean, how could you possibly suggest there was anything untoward about what he did? I mean, he didn't cross state lines with the gun, guys. He didn't cross state lines with the gun. He crossed state lines to get the gun.
Exactly. He bought it.
That
from a
makes it
friend
all okay.
when he was already in Wisconsin.
The night of that event.
In fact, that actually makes it even more premeditated. Because that means that he was crossing state lines in the knowledge that he would be able to acquire a weapon. He was avoiding a possible charge of crossing state lines with a weapon he wasn't legally allowed to have in one of those two states. I mean, that makes it more premeditated, because he had to know that he could actually get one when he was there.
A day afterwards, Sitch and I were watching those videos online as they were breaking out. And I saw the reporting was basically wrong on CNN the night the viral videos were released. Don Lemon was saying, a white kid shoots into a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters.
Which is exactly what happened. That is literally what he did. The video shows that.
And I'm like, what?
Yep.
That's insane. So they kind of poison the narrative from
Yeah, how dare they point out what happened?
the get-go. And then everyone just kind of gets caught up in it.
Yeah, and that's how misinformation spreads. And that was a pivotal
Yeah, and if you read this chat, the chuds are eating it up.
moment for me, because again, misinforming the audience is not something I have any interest in.
I seriously fucking doubt that. I mean, speaking of gaslighting, Anna, you very clearly do.
And I might give them the facts and they might not like it.
But now you've decided that you don't like the facts either, so you're just going to give complete
But
bullshit.
I can't withhold information from them because I'm afraid that they might not like it. So I'm going to give them the facts.
Somebody in their chat says, Rittenhouse has a permanent dent in his head from the skateboard. Good! Fucking good!
But, I've learned to be better about, first of all, the sources I trust. I make an effort.
Yeah, I mean, clearly she's just looking at Nazi shit now. And she's clearly trying to appeal to them. Okay. I think I've seen enough. Is anyone keen on continuing with this, or shall we seek something else out? What do you think, chat? I mean, I feel like this is starting to get repetitive, and I mean, I think we've gleaned everything from this experience that could possibly be gleaned from it. It seems like she's just repeating shit over and over again. Oh, wait a second. Let's see. Okay, we've got just what is causing the political shift in America. The other political side is not evil. And Jordan Peterson's first rule, do not lie. Right. You can choose not to be affected by every injustice. Okay, so those are the chapters. Or we could switch over. We got about a half hour left and we could watch something else. What's everybody reckon, chat? I can go either way.
We started talking a little bit before.
Let's see. We've got, other options would include Ben Shapiro on which Obama is more radical. The answer is neither. Okay, Ben Shapiro gets angry about a pro-abortion song. Xanderhole just notices that the bogus ROGD hoax was retracted 3 years ago. Left LGBT, and then we've got some Tim Pool shit. And memes about killing people are not funny. So, what's everybody think, chat? Shall we continue with Anna Transphobian and her, constant just deluge of fash talking points? Oh, or there's, Richard Dawkins and Ricky Gervais together to make two of the most insufferable duo on stage that I can imagine, talking about the courage to be honest. So what's everybody think?
So, Matt.
Okay, gonna look at LGBTQ celebs demand social media companies ban people who don't support woke ideology, which is great because I think we're gonna hear Tim Pool pretending to be against censorship again. Just recently, when he had Emma Vigeland from the Majority Report on. He announced that he was very big into censorship, very pro-censorship when it comes to sex ed. When he'd spent the past 3 years, claiming to be this big free speech warrior who just will never ever actually say any of the things he feels supposedly that it's important to be able to say on the internet.
Matt Walsh tweeted earlier that we're winning. We're winning.
Well, if Matt Walsh tweeted it, that's impeccable providence there. What is this? Is this a Mail article? No, this is Glad. LGBTQ celebrities and allies call on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter to stop the flow of anti-trans hate and malicious disinformation about trans healthcare. Well, yeah, which is to say they're just calling on these platforms to enforce their own TOS. Because their terms of service already say that they're supposed to be not allowing this. That this stuff is supposed to get you banned. They just don't do it.
And that all the left has left is censorship. I believe he is correct.
He's correct.
In this post from...
Wait a second. This is just really just in the past week he was talking about how much he's very much for censorship when it's sex ed.
Glad. It says LGBTQ celebrities and allies call on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter to stop the flow of anti-trans hate and malicious disinformation about trans healthcare.
Yeah. Which their TOS, every single one of those platforms has it in their TOS that they don't permit that, but they all do because there's tons of money in the far right.
True allies do not profit from anti-LGBTQ hate. Y'all are losing. It's not going to happen. Sorry.
Of course it's not going to happen because the fucking money is not on the side of enforcing TOS against fascists. That's why Tim Pool has a platform. That's why Matt Walsh has a platform. That's why Ben Shapiro has a platform and fucking PragerU. If TOS were actually enforced when against the far right, all these people would have been perma-banned.
The fact that Google just canceled a Pride event shows your cries are falling on deaf ears. So I'm not going to read the letter because it's stupid, but...
Well, I'm going to read the letter because it's kind of important to actually know what we're talking about, and I have a feeling what he's going to say is going to be lying about it. But, he hasn't read it, so I guess the idea is, since he's going to be saying things one way or another that aren't true, if he doesn't read it, then it's not technically a lie because he's speaking out of ignorance. As celebrities, influencers, prominent public figures with significant followings on social media with the undersigned and calling on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter to fulfill the promises you've made to transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and all LGBT users in your terms of service. Yes, literally what I just said. They are just calling on them to enforce TOS.
But they're basically like, anybody who says we're wrong is actually hateful.
That's not actually. Content that spreads malicious lies and disinformation about medically necessary healthcare for transgender youth. We call for you to meet with community leaders and creators to hear about these real-world harms that result from anti-trans content on your platforms and to create and share plans for how you will address content that spreads malicious lies and disinformation about medically necessary healthcare for trans youth.
That's what they've been...
Accounts and postings that perpetuate anti-LGBTQ extremist hate and disinformation, dehumanizing hateful attacks on prominent trans public figures and influencers.
saying that...
Yeah, so they're just, this is like literally, they're just saying, enforce your TOS.
forever.
Look at all these people.
It's been their, one
right.
thing.
Alan Cumming.
Oh, he's a great actor, man.
Well, he wants
Boris
to ban
and
ya.
Goldeneye, dude. That guy is awesome.
Allison Goldfrapp. Who's that?
Yeah, I have no idea. Amy
Oh.
Schumer, we have to do it. We have to do it.
If Amy Schumer says so.
I just don't think that there's any way around it at this point, boys.
All right, who else we got here? Billy Eichner. Who's that?
Oh, Billy Eichner. He just did the rom-com, the gay rom-com.
That bombed. Nobody wanted to watch.
Nobody, meaning that none of his friends do, except, anyone that he knows who doesn't come out to him as being gay, because obviously he would not be somebody to do. Bradley Whitford. Okay. This is like really basic. I had no...
Yeah.
This is
And
like a
I'll
really
say this too about his
basic
movie
thing to be calling
Bros.
for.
Just simply put,
Yeah.
if you make a movie whose target demographic is 0.04% of the population, don't be surprised when it sells tickets to only 0.04% of the population.
Actually, do be surprised and call everyone a homophobe.
That's what he did, didn't he?
Yeah, that's almost certainly not what happened.
That's right.
Well, I don't know if he actually did, but it
Yeah, exactly. This is what you could do on the Tim Pool cast. Tim Pool, and any of the chuds he has on, they'll say some just remarkable bullshit, and then it's like, oh, well, I don't know if this actually happened, but this is the thing that happened, not that I actually know, I haven't checked.
bombed, and they were like, "It's not fair. Something was wrong. It should work."
Dylan Mulvaney's on there, believe it or not.
Look,
Bella
look at
Ramsey.
Also, I mean, the thing is, if the target demographic was specifically LGBTQ people, and it did well amongst LGBTQ people, then you wouldn't really say that it bombed. And sometimes maybe you're making content specifically for a particular demographic, just like, I mean, his favorite media products are all making content very specifically for white man boys like him.
She's like 20, 21.
That's shocking. I'm
I
surprised.
can't
to see it
believe
going
that.
there.
Yeah.
It's a cult.
The Colts.
Judd Apatow,
It's a good list
Let's,
for a second.
yeah,
Cal Penn.
The thing is, like, I don't think it's possible for any of these names to disappoint me. You know,
What if you saw your
Yeah.
own name on there?
I'd be like, wait, how did that happen?
Like, I'll be seeing my.
Actually, I mean, I've been surprised. Like Lena Dunham, she's been kind of shitty on trans rights previously. I seem to remember.
Self out.
thinking?
Mae Whitman. That's disappointing.
Hmm.
She's the voice of Katara in Avatar.
Well, what are they? What was the letter?
Wait till he finds out that most people in the U.S. actually don't like outright, just like vicious homophobic and transphobic content. I mean, it doesn't do well in the polls, even amongst the people, even amongst their target audience. It isn't actually popular. People who vote for Republicans also don't like this stuff.
I don't really want to read through all of it.
Basically saying
necessarily,
they want us banned.
for
Well, I mean, if they he's right. If Google and the other platforms that he's on enforced their TOS, he would be banned. He would have been banned quite a few times. I mean, there was the time he celebrated the fucking massacre at the Trans Day of Remembrance Memorial in Colorado Springs. There's been all the times that he has openly incited violence against trans people, has said all sorts of racist shit. I mean, all sorts of medical disinformation as well. I mean, you could just go down, like, and he's actually said on stream that he has a rep at Google, and when his stuff gets demonetized by the algorithm because he's violated TOS, which he does, like, in pretty much every episode in one way or another, he can just go to this Google rep, and say, look, my stuff got demonetized, and they turn it right back on.
for trans for not supporting
Well, good.
child
They're right.
sex changes.
They want us banned.
It's good. They're right.
pretty much.
Look, healthcare.
Child sex change. Fuck you.
They
man.
call it healthcare in the letter, and
Yes, because, like, the entire fucking medical community, the medical consensus is that it is healthcare.
understand the position. Not everyone agrees that cutting young children.
Which is literally not happening. I mean, this is literally nobody's. Actually, I misspeak, because the thing is, if you look at these laws against trans healthcare, the authors have clearly noticed that if they were to make a general ban, then you would also be banning the non-consensual and very harmful genital mutilation of intersex infants and small children. So they went and made an exception so that actual mutilation stays legal. I mean, that's in the Idaho law, I believe, and I've seen it in a couple of the others. That is literally the only kind of cutting that is actually going on in this situation. Like, young kids aren't even getting hormones. Social transition for young kids is just, you wear different clothes and you try on a different name and pronouns, and that's it.
To sever parts of them is
That's literally
necessarily
not how.
healthcare.
They appeal to authority and say, well, the AMA says so.
Well, not just the AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Authority, the authoritative world medical body on trans healthcare, the World Health Organization, like literally the American College of Endocrinologists, like literally every single medical body that has anything to do with this has said that obviously this is life-saving healthcare, because we've got years and years of studies saying that, yeah, this saves lives.
But my point the whole time, which has not been refuted by a single person, other than your science is not real science, even though it is.
Well, I mean, so it's not been refuted, except that people have pointed out that you're just relying on hoaxes. That's what's called being refuted, Tim. Actually, when somebody points out that you're just using hoaxes that have absolutely no scientific status, which is what's happened when these things, even like Trump appointees, have ended up saying some seriously dragging the experts that these states have been bringing out to justify their trans exterminationist laws, like saying things like, well, the states say that there's a lack of high quality evidence, which is a very specific technical term in the scientific field, and literally it would be impossible to get what counts as high quality evidence in these cases, because you couldn't really do a double-blind randomized control study, because everybody would know whether somebody was getting blockers or hormones or they weren't. It's literally impossible. And then the judges go on to say things like, yeah, maybe these aren't double-blinded randomized control studies on the side of the scientific consensus, but what these states are bringing out is just literally non-existent evidence. And experts who have never seen a single trans patient, experts who know absolutely nothing about this and refuse to answer questions.
Is that you have several studies showing desistance without intervention is over 60%.
No, that's actually not true. I mean, the desistance without... Okay, that study, there's a study that says that. And that study did not distinguish between kids who identified as a different gender than the one they were assigned at birth and kids who were just gender non-conforming. It literally did not distinguish between, so it was not studying trans kids. And when you actually look at the studies of specifically trans kids, kids with cross-gender identification, what you find is the desistance rate is very low. In fact, so low that now the talking point for like transphobes has been that blockers, it's clearly blockers are just a gateway drug to hormones because almost all the kids who go on blockers go on hormones later. And it's like, well, that just shows that people aren't prescribing these things willy-nilly, because if you randomly selected 100 kids out of a given, school district, based on nothing, without taking anything into account, and gave them blockers, and then asked them 4 or 5 years later, after 4 or 5 years being on them, would you like to go on cross-sex hormones, or would you like to go off of these? Like, probably 100% would say, I'd like to go off of those. I didn't want to go on them in the first place. It sucked. Because you would almost certainly not, there's so few trans people, statistically, you would probably not actually, it would be a statistical error if you actually even had one trans person in that study. So they're using the fact that actually the assessments are being done very carefully for before they prescribe blockers to kids, which are a compromise to begin with. What would be actually ideal in most cases would be to just let these kids have the hormones so they can have the puberty that they want, rather than just postponing it for several years, which has its own problems, but it's a compromise. So they've actually pivoted, even though they on the one hand claim that desistance is so high based on studies that don't look at trans people at all, that look at trans and gender non-conforming children, and then they say, desistance is suspiciously low on the studies of what happens when kids who are prescribed blockers are old enough to get HRT.
Study needs
well, also
to be.
The Netherlands started doing
It's
this.
more than one. It's multiple studies.
Yeah.
The Netherlands started doing this in the 1980s. That's on trans kids. 40 years of experience, 40 years of study and research and experience we have on the use of blockers in both cis and trans children.
And the Netherlands started doing this in 1990, basically not just basically, but before any other country, and they've found that the suicide rate doesn't decrease. So.
Yeah, actually, that's not true. They found that it does decrease. They found, in fact, every single study that has looked at it says if you provide the interventions that, trans kids say are looking for, including social transition, including, respecting their pronouns, respecting their identities, preventing them from having a traumatic puberty in the wrong gender, and shit like that, it does, in fact, massively reduce suicide. I mean, he's just lying here. I mean...
So, I mean, either
The
the
point is
left
this.
has to say that Europe's medical system, and particularly the Netherlands medical system, Nordic Europe's medical system, got it wrong, and
No, they don't, because what you're saying is bullshit. You're just making this up.
America's evil corrupt capital.
And this is an interesting way for him to admit that the talking point about blockers in trans kids being experimental is bullshit. Because if they've been using them for that long in the Netherlands, and I think they've been using it for a little bit longer than 1990, I think it's the 1980s, then there's 40 years of experience. Nothing that people have been using without a problem for 40 years is experimental. You
Medical system
dickhead.
got it right, or they have to admit it's nonsense.
Here's my point for these people.
Well, I mean, what really gets me, and it really just shows how dishonest the whole thing is you'd have to ask, why is it that when you... If this is so bad for trans people, if this is so bad for everybody who gets these things, why is it that everybody who is getting them now and is being threatened by these laws to have it taken away from them is freaking out over it? If it's not, if it's useless, if it's actually harmful. Like, I mean, they won't touch that because they don't have a good answer to that.
Let's use the lowest possible interpretation of desistance studies.
Okay, so less than 5%.
60%.
That is not the lowest. That's not even close. I mean, if we look at the studies that are specifically of trans kids, it's less than 5%.
If 60% of kids who are dysphoric receive no intervention and then go on to lead normal lives.
That is literally not what any of these fucking studies say.
Why give them intervention if there is a
Like, see, this is another example. Like, if TOS were enforced, what he's doing here is just massive disinformation, and this has real-world harms. Because at least some parents are watching this. I mean, his entire aesthetic, his entire style is targeted towards 12-year-old boys. I mean, with the guitar, with the fucking samurai sword and the old-timey Western gun, with the fucking beanie and the Marvel movie references. I mean, but some of their parents are also watching this. Some people who will have authority to decide whether to get some of whom may have trans kids and will be in the position of deciding what to do about that. And if they hear this bullshit, that will seriously hurt those kids. So yeah, I mean, if TOS were enforced, he would be banned for this right now. This is just, I mean, what he's saying is just outright nonsense.
60% chance you will subject them to something which has a high rate of suicidality.
That is literally the opposite. He just, I mean, and he's actually completely changed tracks just in the past couple of minutes. Because a minute ago he was saying, with no intervention, they go on to lead normal lives. And then he's saying that now he's suddenly saying that with the intervention that these kids are actively seeking out, mind you, it increases suicidality, which is exactly the opposite of the reality, of course. I mean, the drop in suicidality is significant. We're talking like, I think, like 40-50% drop in suicidal ideation amongst kids who get to socially transition, who get blockers, who get all, trans kids who actually have, whose identities are actually respected and who get the care that they need, are less likely to kill themselves.
It literally makes no sense.
I mean, chat. I'm not thinking this is new to chat, new to anyone in chat, but somebody's watching this on the VOD. I just want to have said it just in case somebody sees this and has not seen this bullshit debunked a million times before.
The odds are leaning towards let the kid grow up.
Yeah.
No, they really aren't. I mean, like, literally every single thing he just said is just a lie. I mean, that's actually giving him credit. I don't think he's actually bothered. I don't think he does any kind of research for this. He clearly does not have any kind of fact checking. He may very well never have actually looked at any of the stuff he's talking about. He just heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody, and he never checked it out because he doesn't check anything. So, in that sense, it's not so much a lie, but he's still full of shit. and he's still full of shit in a way that can and will hurt people. Like, if TOS were enforced, this motherfucker would not have a platform.
Go at the very least, go through 14 or 15 years old should be the minimum before they even consider doing any kind of social whatever.
You know, that is literally just guaranteeing high suicidality. And now we've moved away from talking about blockers, and I mean, fucking Moonlord was talking about surgeries, if that's a thing that fucking happens to trans kids, as opposed to, like, I mean that surgery under 18 is virtually unheard of, and even in places where you would be able to consent to it at 16, it's still pretty fucking rare to get it under 18. Yeah, I mean, it's basically unheard of. But now he's talking about this as if you're delaying social transition in kids who are experiencing active distress. So the idea is, a kid comes to you at 4 years old and tells you, that they feel like they're the other gender, that actually they want to be a girl, want to be a boy, whatever, or they're non-binary or whatever. And you're supposed to say, well, maybe put up with this for 10 years, and then maybe we will consider respecting that. I mean, this is just literally, and there's no way that he hasn't been told this. Because every time one of these pricks says something like this on Twitter or wherever, people show up, assuming good faith that very much is not there, to say, dude, this is wrong. Here, here's what the actual studies say. What you're saying is going to get people killed. He knows this. Actually, the more I think about it, he probably knows this. And, I mean, he celebrated the Club Q massacre, so he just wants to see trans people get killed. Because if a chub is his fork, and you do literally nothing, it's actually upwards of 98% of kids desist. Wait, no. I mean, he was saying 60%. And then it was 60 to 80%. Now he's saying 98%. And actually, it is less than 5%. Again, these are made up numbers. No study claims this. I mean, even the sloppy ass studies that did not distinguish between gender nonconforming and cross-gender identifying did not claim this. This is a Tim Pool original. He's just lying here. They don't detransition. I'm saying if they never receive intervention in any way, they go on to lead normal lives. And that's absolutely not true. I mean, he's just making this shit up. It's funny. He reads, he has this thing up. He gets all mad because all these people have signed an open letter calling on platforms like YouTube to enforce their TOS against fucking lies about trans healthcare that are getting people killed. And he decides that his response to it is to tell some of the most egregious ones I've heard today. And I've heard some pretty bad ones today because I follow this bullshit. But with that, it is time to wrap up for tonight. Thank you to everyone who joined. I hope you enjoyed the stream as much as I have. And I will be back tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And if you enjoyed the stream, please consider supporting the Kalantai crowdfunded translation project, which you can do with, let me just drop the link. Give you the link so you can actually know where to go to support it. Yeah. Here, if you become a patron here, or follow the tip link that's on that page, you can support the crowdfunded translation of Kalantai's social basis of the female question. I'm currently on chapter 2, the second to last and second longest of the chapters, and I would very much appreciate any support I can get, including signal boosting, in order to publicize this project, because I really want to get the full book out there. And I need to have the thing fully financed and able to dedicate the time. Thank you to everyone who joined, and I'll see you tomorrow, I hope.